threaten my people with slavery and death.
Persian or Greek, no man threatens a messenger.
This is Sparta!
Hi everyone, welcome to the IQ Movie channel, and in this video we will discuss a film called 300. Tells the story of 300 Spartan soldiers who fought against 300,000 Persian troops in a narrow valley alley, until finally 300 Spartan soldiers died by the ferocity of the Persians. Set in Greece, this film will be a history lesson for those of you who have never known the Spartans, which was one of the most powerful nations in ancient Greece and was feared by the world at that time. Begins with the story of Leonidas' childhood until he became a king of Sparta. Since the age of 7, Leonidas had been forged into a Sparta with very hard training until he was released into the wild to survive in the cruelty of the wild, until he managed to return to the land of Sparta. And then made a king. The story then continues when Sparta has guests who are envoys from Persia. They came asking for land and water as a sign of submission by the Spartans to the Persian king named Xerxes. There Leonidas looked at the nature of Sparta and its people with deep thought, then decided to refuse to submit to the Persians and kick them all into a very deep well. It was all because they were too proud and arrogant to carry the skulls of the kings they had conquered as proof of their greatness and power. Then Leonidas came to Ephor, who had a terrible form. Ephor was the priest of the ancient gods of Sparta. Leonidas faced the Ephor because throughout history there was no king who started a war without the permission and blessing of the Ephor. There Leonidas asked for their approval to fight to expel the Persians who intended to control Greek land. Then Ephor asked the oracle's approval, who was a beautiful woman in Sparta who lived with them as an oracle vessel. But instead of asking for approval, they asked for prayers for Sparta to be destroyed and all of Greece to fall. Feeling betrayed, then Leonidas left without heeding their prohibition. And it turned out that the Ephors had been bribed by one of Xerxes' emissaries, who was accompanied by the traitorous Spartan politician named Theron. That night Leonidas could not sleep because he was thinking about what to do to expel the Persians. Then his wife woke up giving a little input of mind and body like this. The next day Leonidas gathered 300 of Sparta's best warriors to accompany him to the north to the hot gates to repel hundreds of thousands of Persian troops. Before leaving, there his wife gave his necklace to Leonidas to take with him. Maybe as a talisman. On the way they met the Arcadian warriors led by Daxus. The Arcadian wanted to join the Spartan army to join the war at the hot gate against the Persians. Then there they built a wall to keep the Persian troops from going to the hot gate using the corpses of the Persian troops they killed earlier. And not long after, Xerxes' envoy came asking who their commander was. Then Stelios quickly cut off the hand of the Persian envoy who wanted to whip them, asking him to return to Xerxes and informing them that the troops they would face here were free troops and not slaves.
My arm!
It's not yours anymore. Tell your Xerxes he faces free men here.
In the evening when he was discussing with his friends, suddenly Ephialtes appeared. He told Leonidas that there was a secret path that the Persians could use to surround them. This Ephialtes was a descendant of Sparta who suffered from birth defects, whose parents left Sparta so that he would not be killed as a baby, as was the tradition there, that when a new baby was born in Sparta, the baby would be examined whether the baby had a disability. Physical or not. If disabled, then the baby will be killed and thrown away. There Ephialtes also asked to join Leonidas' soldiers, but Leonidas refused his request because his physical condition was not suitable for war and would even damage their war strategy. Suddenly tens of thousands of Persian troops came and the battle began. There they faced endless attacks of Persian troops because their numbers were very large, but in the narrow valley passage the number of Persian troops was meaningless. With such a good war formation they finally managed to paralyze so many Persian troops and forced them to fall off the cliff and thrown into the ocean. It didn't end there. Suddenly hundreds of thousands of arrows came raining down on them, to the point that the sky became dark because so many arrows were flying at them. But they easily use a shield to ward off the attack. On the other hand, in Sparta, the queen, who is Leonidas' wife, asks for the help of one of the consuls so that she is given the opportunity to speak in front of the council, in order to send reinforcements to the hot gate to help Leonidas' troops who are facing the attack of Xerxes' troops. But unfortunately he has to overcome one small obstacle, namely Theron, who has great influence in the Pata council. The queen must succeed in persuading him and working with him so that his voice is heard by other councils. Back to the hot gate, there Xerxes came to Leonidas and offered wealth and power in return if he would submit to Xerxes. But Leonidas flatly refused to submit to him. Then Xerxes was furious and threatened to erase the name Sparta from world history. Then Leonidas ordered his troops to build a fort using the piles of bodies of the victims of the Persian troops they had defeated before to deal with the next attack that would come. That night Xerxes sent his elite warriors known as the immortal troops, who were claimed to be the greatest warriors in Asia. There the Spartan army had the opportunity to test the reputation of the immortal army. The Spartan army was a little overwhelmed to face the immortal army with their endless number of them. One by one the immortal army fell and some of the Spartan troops also became victims. The immortal army also unleashed a giant monster that attacked Leonidas blindly, but the Spartan army was still more powerful and defeated them all. There Leonidas also managed to behead the monster, then gave the Arcadians a code to help them defeat the immortal army. The defeat of one of his best elite soldiers made Xerxes even more furious. Then the next day he sent another army that was far more terrible than before. Thousands of troops came accompanied by a giant horned rhinoceros, which was then defeated by a javelin from Astinos, son of Captain Artemis. That day the Persian troops attacked the Spartan troops repeatedly, followed by mystical power to the giant elephant army, which was again successfully repulsed by the Spartan troops and fell into the ocean. In the midst of the war, suddenly from behind the fog one of the Persian troops came slashing the neck of Astinos, who was off guard. Captain Artemis, who saw the incident, then attacked the Persian troops blindly without mercy. On the other hand, Ephialtes, who was hurt by Leonidas, finally betrayed Xerxes by telling Xerxes a secret path that the Persian troops could use to surround the Spartan army from the top of the cliff. For his cooperation then Xerxes gave Ephialtes in return for wealth, luxury, and women. Turning to the hot gate, Diana Daxus came to see Leonidas, informing that Ephialtes had betrayed by revealing the secret passage to Xerxes. Due to their deteriorating condition and position, the Arcadians chose to withdraw from the war, but the Spartan troops remained firm in their stance by choosing to stay afloat and face the siege of the Xerxes troops who had known the secret passage. Leonidas then ordered Dilios, who had lost an eye, to come back to Sparta and tell the people what happened at this hot gate. Initially Dilios refused and convinced Leonidas that he was still strong to fight, but Leonidas still forced him to return because he was a soldier who had other talents unlike other Spartan soldiers. Then Leonidas left her necklace to be returned to the queen. The next day the queen came to the council building, where she spoke to the council about what had happened at the hot gate and asked them to send in reinforcements. But Theron humiliated him in front of the other councils, saying that the queen had an affair with him when she persuaded Theron to help him get his voice heard by the council. The angry queen then drew someone's sword there and killed Theron to death, and finally it was revealed that Theron was a traitor who cooperated with Xerxes to destroy Sparta, as seen from the symbol of Xerxes coins that scattered from Theron's pocket at that time. On the following day, the Persian army led by Ephialtes crossed a secret passage to surround the Spartan army from the top of the hill. Xerxes is here to bring thousands of his elite troops to besiege Leonidas and his troops. There Xerxes through a general again demands Leonidas to surrender and acknowledge Xerxes' power as god and ruler of the world. Leonidas thought carefully again as he took off his helmet and battle shield and knelt down and bowed down in front of Xerxes. Xerxes, who saw this, was shocked as if he couldn't believe now that Leonidas was defeated so easily, but it turned out that it was all just a trick. Suddenly Stelios jumped forward and killed the general. Then quickly Xerxes ordered all his troops to attack and kill all the Spartans. In the midst of an onslaught of arrows, Leonidas' enemy got up and threw his spear at Xerxes until he managed to injure his right cheek, which proves that even a person who claims to be a god can be injured or even killed. Then the remaining Spartan troops fought until their last drop of blood slaughtered all their opponents, until finally they were all killed by thousands of arrows that came pouring down on their bodies. And Leonidas along with 300 of his troops were subject to this hot gate after being betrayed by his own people.
In all the countless centuries yet to be.
On the other hand, Dilios, who had returned to Sparta and met the queen and gave the necklace left by Leonidas to her without a word, and told his story with Leonidas to the councils who had been willing to sacrifice for Sparta. A year later, Dilios retold his story with Leonidas and his 300 troops who died at the Hot Gate, to provide motivation and encouragement to the 30,000 Greek troops who joined the 10,000 Spartans. Now Dilios led them all to avenge them for the death of Leonidas on the Persian army. And that's the end of the 300 film this time. I hope you are entertained by the storyline of this film and increase your knowledge of history. As usual, don't forget to subscribe to this channel to always get updates on other interesting movie storylines from this channel, and see you in the next video.
This is Sparta!